Well, Jeff, I am so glad to have you on today. How are you doing? This is everybody that doesn't know, this is Jeff Lutz. And it's like, do you think there's anybody left that doesn't know you, Jeff? I
Oh, I'm
think,
sure there's plenty.
oh, there's, I mean, in the community. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they'll drop a comment and say hello.
That's right. That's
Yeah, no, great to be with you, Randy.
all right. Listen, I want to start today with something I would call it in the nothing else will really matter department. How's that?
Yeah,
So Elon said today, FSD 12.4.1 releases today to Tesla employees. If that goes well, that's the question mark, okay, put that in parentheses. If that goes well, then it will be released to a limited number of external customers this weekend. There are massive numbers of changes this build. It should be arguably called V13, but we're sticking to 12. Two other versions in earlier stages of testing, 12.5, 12.6. They could be called version 14 and 15. We're starting to get to the point where once known bugs are fixed, let me say that again, we're starting to get to the point where once known bugs are fixed, it will take over a year of driving to get even one intervention. So with those little caveats, what does that mean to you?
yeah. There's a lot of caveats in that statement. It just says that they're getting closer. It says that Tesla has. It looks like they have some modeling capability. They have simulation capability. They have some acceleration capability where they can run this in the lab. They can probably run it on vehicles, and they can with a fewer number of miles in a shorter amount of time, they could drive some acceleration in their testing. That's what it is. This is commonly used as well in other industries, hardware and even in software. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to drive out failure in a shorter period of time. If you can fail faster,
Mhm.
that's better for you. It's better for everyone because you can find the bugs faster, fix them faster, get your release out faster. Um, so I would say with this release, when he says there's a massive number of changes, it could be called V13. Usually there can be some amount of correlation to the number of changes you make and the amount of breakage you do in a particular build, whether it's
Sure.
hardware or software. So I wasn't surprised to see the point release. I think what Tesla is doing is extremely impressive. And but I would say in any situation I've been in, when you have a large number of changes, you have a stabilization period you have to go through. There may be some point releases and some things that they find across more drivers and some more time. So I think they'll be careful at rolling this out. Um, but I mean, this team has, I would say, a fairly good reputation. If you look at the number of permutations of vehicles out there, and you look at the even the permutations of different software lines out there that
Right.
they've got to upgrade from and to, um, you don't see many postings of my car doesn't work anymore. I know there's been a couple of situations, but in general, they have a pretty good track record of getting cars upgraded, and they must have a really good test planned to be able to deal with all the different hardware permutations and have it run this smoothly. So, looking forward to seeing 12.4.1. He discussed a 12.5 and a 12.6. These sound like the releases that will drive us right up into the 8.8 event. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of caveats on the statements. But again, through acceleration, through simulations where they can do apples to apples testing, they could have the same acceleration, they could have the same simulators from 6 months ago, 9 months ago, or they could even make them smarter. But even so, it looks like what they're seeing in the lab is looking very good. Now you actually have to see it across a large number of vehicles.
So, all right. So even my wife, who doesn't drive that much, probably about, at the very most 1,000 miles a month, probably way less, probably more like 800 miles a month. And then I maybe drive 200 miles a month. She is now just really, really encouraged. She's like saying, it drives itself. It's like she very rarely intervenes. I just had Scott Walter on. He just drove from Florida to Texas to watch the liftoff tomorrow morning. And he said he had no safety interventions at all on the trip from Florida to Texas. On the other hand, Nicholas Gibbs, who's obviously a bull and a big fan, he posted today, I can understand this for normal road driving, but school zones, pulling over for emergency vehicles, certain construction areas, parking lots, parking garages, my own driveway, pulling into my own garage, and anytime that I need to back up are still requiring 100% takeovers. So are these the kind of things you think might be this massive change that we're talking
Yeah.
about, a lot of these kinds of issues?
Yeah. Yeah. The ability to reverse. I think the things that Nicholas brought up were all critical things that have to be fixed, especially if you're progressing towards unsupervised driving. You're going to have to recognize emergency vehicles. You're going to have to be able to manage construction in a way. And again, I've seen the car do some pretty impressive things around construction areas, but it's got to be all the time.
Right.
So yeah, so these features, I could see reverse and sprouting into 3-point turn. I can see the summon features, a lot of different things coming in. And with that, you need more test cases, you need more simulation, you need more acceleration, you need all these things you'd have to do. So these are the things that take up time, and these are the things that they've got a plan for. But I think those are all appropriate things that, it's not feature complete. That's one of in software world, it's honestly, there's a race to define the requirements up very early on. You want to define the requirements. You don't want this thing continuing to proliferate. And then there's a race to drive. Once you have the requirements, there's really a race to drive the feature complete, where you're not integrating new features. When you integrate new features, you can drive more breakage.
Right.
And then there's really a drive to stabilize the code base. So thinking about the number of lines of code, but in this case, now we're talking about training models, the size of these training models. So there's this stabilization period you want to drive. You want to get the feature complete. You want to drive this stabilization. You want to reduce the rate of change. And then you want to see the open bug count. You want to see that rate decline. That's what you want to see. And you want to see at some point you've reached some sort of terminal peak, and you want to see that roll off. So it sounds like to me in so many words that, Elon thinks they're approaching that point of feature complete, but now you're going to need this period of stabilization, which it looks like they're trying to drive it in between each release. But it sounds like he's saying these releases are so big that, they're kind of their own beast, like a 13, a 14, a 15 it was what he's calling them. So, yeah, I think that's the progression. That's what you need to drive towards. And I think those are all appropriate call outs.
All right. So he gives this a metric of one intervention, and I assume he means safety intervention, not just because I would like it to go faster, but rather a safety intervention, one intervention per year or per 14,000 miles. Do you consider, I don't know what Elon considers, but would that be good enough for RoboCab?
That's a great question. So first off, I think the interventions need to be defined. I don't think if it's safety, like if you're going into the other lane of traffic, if you're going to drive off the road, I don't think one per year is acceptable.
Okay.
That's a problem is if it's unsupervised. And the other thing is the psychology of it being supervised and it only having one incident per year. You're going to have people kind of, so to speak, asleep at the wheel.
Right.
But they're not going to be as attentive as they are now. Right now, it's sometimes not, I would say not in this current release, but in V11 and early 12 releases, a little bit of white knuckle period when you're driving. So you're always attentive. So there's a little bit of psychology at play. I don't agree with one safety intervention per year. It has to improve from there. Yeah, I mean, that would be disastrous actually if you think about a million vehicles having a safety issue, let's just put it on a million.
Yeah.
In a year, that would be a problem. So it's got to get much lower, actually.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Ross Gerber, has lost all credibility as far as I'm concerned. I used to follow Ross and thought that he had some wisdom from time to time. Anyway, he really thinks he knows more than Elon. And on the matter of this redeployment of the NVIDIA chips, he really seems to believe that Elon screwed Tesla. And I guess he hasn't even heard enough defense of what actually took place to be convinced otherwise. So Elon added some more nuance today. He says the existing factory space was already allocated to vehicle, battery, and cell production. This would mean Austin, the all but the new South addition, the extension in the South. Everything else is already allocated, so there's no place else. And so you have to build this South extension. And this is not a matter of trucking what does he say here? Tucking a few computers into a corner. You need a kilowatt of power and cooling for each GPU, which would mean 12 megawatts of power and 12 megawatts of cooling. The South extension is custom built for heavy power compute and cooling. The cooling towers are huge. Initial system is 50,000 H100s plus 20,000 Tesla HW4 AI computers and a massive video storage. Important to note that FSD training requires massive liquid cooling, Tesla AI compute, and video storage, not just NVIDIA. I figure you probably have an opinion on what Elon just said.
Yeah. And I posted about this as well, even specific comment. Yeah, there's people in the community that are converting themselves into cartoon characters where you can't even recognize them anymore. They're kind of blinded. And there's nothing wrong with being objective about moves that Tesla makes and being critical at times. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But when the takes are incorrect and they're really honestly motivated by some other, extenuating circumstance. I mean, my question back to Ross is you were self-nominating yourself to be a board member. So do you think that, bringing the situation to the board of like, look, we have 500 million of silicon coming in and these systems coming in. We don't have a home for them right now. We had a bottleneck in another area. And quite frankly, these things are going to sit on our books as excess. The worst thing you can have on your books are excess and obsolescence. And it would be excess at this point. It would be hitting the inventory. And it would be a big number. It would be a huge number.
Yeah.
And then you've got and I've been in this situation. I've purchased silicon through from NVIDIA. I've been in these situations before. I've been on the called the OEM side of the table. And I understand how these situations go. And they also could have been on a take or pay contract. We don't know the contract details that Tesla or XAI are under. And the way take or pay works is if you said you wanted 500 million in Q4, we supply them, you're taking them, yes, or you're writing us a check for it. And so, in this situation with all the variables here, the other thing is, and I've been a part of companies where you have a CEO that they're over multiple entities. Yeah. And in these situations, you have to have an allocating party who has control over multiple entities. Right. He is that allocating party over all those entities. So he is empowered to look and say, all right, I'm in a constrained situation. Where's the best place? Where's the best solution? And he can make those decisions. Now, there's this clown show on X about people who just don't understand how allocation works. They're allocating every month. They're allocating every week. None of these emails should have leaked, by the way, on the NVIDIA side. I mean, they should be investigating that and dealing with those involved with that. That's not open kimono for the media. In fact, it exposes NVIDIA to other problems. Okay, so if you're going to expose this about Tesla, why don't you expose like how you allocate between Tesla and Meta, for example? Yeah. Or how does Meta allocate between Reality Labs and Llama? Right. So inappropriate. But anyway, this whole concept of allocation, reallocation is happening I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening this week while he's tweeting about this incident. And by the way, there's nothing about this incident that couldn't have been reported on 1 or 2 months ago. This happened, 5-6 months ago. Yeah. I think the timing is suspicious. And regardless of the fact, I can put my black hat on and say, again, I'm a long-term shareholder. I want the best thing for Tesla. I mean, right now I don't have an interest in XAI. I know XAI is going to help Tesla out, but I don't have a financial interest in XAI. So I put my black. I'm like, what could go wrong here? What are the problems? And the answer in my is like, look, if you're not ready and you're bottlenecked elsewhere, and you can move it and not take the inventory hit, that is 100% the right move. That was the best move for Tesla's balance sheet. That was the best move for Tesla shareholders at that time. Now, why is the data center, why is the facilitation not ready? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe someone, obviously should dig into that. But these things are hard to the schedule for these things and the complexity around them. They are difficult things to put together. This is not just, oh, people are like, oh, you just have a box of chips and you have to store them somewhere. That's not how this works. And so, yeah, I think I was really surprised. I think a number of people on X really expose themselves. There are provocateurs. There are people who are just trying to push this article around and say, whoa, what do we have here? And really just not understanding how any of this works, or even making the effort to try to find an expert in industry and say, how does this normally work? And ask some questions. They just want to throw stuff out there and say, oh, this looks bad and blah, blah, blah. And to me, those people expose themselves. And there's people that are trying to drive options volatility. There's all kinds of, I think, you'd have to really look at, I think, the motivations of some people and their commentary. And again, I think it's okay to be critical of Tesla, but in this situation, from everything I've seen, this was the best move actually for Tesla shareholders. And when they're ready to build a cluster and the product comes in, that's the best thing you want. You want the shortest time from in your network of order to delivery. You want the shortest network latency involved. You do not want stuff sitting in inventory. You do not want stuff collecting dust, because the longer that takes, the longer your time to break even is in that whole system. So, I mean, I can go on and on for this, but I
Yeah,
think Elon,
even
he
in
answered it.
even in addition to bookkeeping, you can sometimes have additional expense. You might have to move it twice. You
Yeah,
might have to store it where somebody's charging you for the containers that it's stored in.
yeah.
You might have,
You may damage it.
you may damage it. It might be damaged because it's sitting. There's all kinds of possible ways that could go wrong. So it does seem to me that you are right, that this is the smartest thing they could have done. Obviously, there is a temptation to say, gee whiz, where's that PR department we've been talking about?
Yeah.
And I continue to think, I don't know, Jeff, maybe I'm just nuts, and I haven't done anything about it because I don't have time. But there should be, I would think that what is it about the press that they will not look to Jeff Lutz and Nicholas Gibbs and these other individuals? You have an expert background. Nicholas Gibbs clearly has an expert background. Go down the list. Scott Walter, expert background. Why they've reached out one time that I know of. They reached out to me. They might have reached out to you the same day. They ended up using John Gibbs. I forget, it was some television channel or something, but it would seem like they'd be reaching out to this community for some of the answers on these things, but they're not.
They follow me, and I'm sure they follow you and others in the community. And I have interacted with a number of these these authors and so forth. That article was going out no matter what. Even if they got a response back from Tesla that said, here's the situation, this is what happens, that would have been printed in the final 5% of that article. Hey, we reached out to Tesla and this is what they said. But that headline of Elon moves chips from Tesla to his own entity, that headline was going out regardless. That headline was timed to the week before shareholder votes being closed, and that headline was going to go out regardless. No matter if Tesla had an Apple-like PR department, that headline was going out. And yeah, that's a hit piece.
And there's proof. And there's proof of that, because after Elon put out his post on X, they added that to the very bottom of the story, and they kept the headline and they kept it at the top of the page on
Yep.
CNBC's website for hours and hours and hours and hours
Yeah.
afterwards. So, and they didn't change the headline, and they didn't change anything about the article except that last 5% that you're talking about. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. All right. Well, anyway, I think I certainly see no negligence or inappropriate behavior on the part of Tesla or Elon in this, but I wanted to get your take on it as well. Okay, so just breaking before I came on, we have Sawyer Merritt saying Tesla has built their 50 millionth 4680 battery cell at Giga Texas. This comes 7.5 months after they built their 20 millionth cell in October 23. So that's 30 million cells between October and now. And then he did some math for us. He says that would be enough to make 22,321 Cybertrucks, since each one has 1,344. No, I'm sorry, 1,344 cells. So that seems to me to be still too slow. What do you think?
Yeah, it is. And the 4680 has missed the mark on a number of different performance characteristics and ramp. And I know there's some commentary in Q1 of it. Oh, it's not the gate. And we used to call that, it's not the long 10 pole, it's the world's tallest midget. I mean, again, no, I mean, just it's a problem. It's got a performance problem. It's got a supply problem, and I, 4680. I mean, there's reason to be critical. Now, Panasonic is supposed to start supplying 4680s, I want to say in the August-September timeframe. So this is going to be interesting. Did they resolve some of the efficiency issues? Did they resolve the yield issues? Can they ramp? This is going to be interesting to watch. I mean, because economically, this is could have been a great thing for Tesla, especially with the IRA credit.
Right.
From a network design perspective, it's beautiful. Cells, packs, everything in Austin, everything goes together in the vehicle, and boom, it ships out. It's beautiful. But quite frankly, LFP is much better solution for most tiers of vehicles.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, right now, I mean, unless they can get a real efficiency boost and improvement, I mean, this is one of the reasons the Cybertruck missed the mark in terms of range. I think it's a wonderful vehicle, but if you say like, what's the kind of the one semi disappointing thing from a spec perspective is the range piece of it. So it's got a number of things to do. I would say it's slow. I mean, it's still kind of slow.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you later, but I'll ask now. So if you got a chance to ask a question next Thursday at the shareholders meeting, would 4680 be near the top of your list of things you'd want to know? Or do you have something that's way up there beyond?
No, I need to work on my question, but it would be more around kind of how are they going to leverage their automobile energy and bot volume from a supply chain perspective. I would want to understand that better and just understand if they've thought through it, because I think it's probably one of the most powerful things that could be driving Tesla is they have the number one volume model in autos.
Right.
They're going to be a significant volume player in energy storage, and the bot thing could just literally, I mean, it's massive,
Right.
the volume. So are they pulling this all together, and they trying to figure out, what does this mean from a supply base perspective, and what are they thinking about in terms of the bot? So I would have a lot of questions about that, but I have to think through it. I am going to the meeting,
Yes.
and I will have a question ready.
So that question would be a little bit in the weeds for most people, other than you and me, but I certainly understand what you're getting at.
Yeah, that's why I want to bring it out of the weeds and maybe think
Bring it out of
through
the
something
weeds
else.
let some people think about that, because obviously when you get your volumes up, and you've got a new direction and you're going back to those same suppliers, you should be able to leverage that, and it could be significant points. We're not talking about little tiny amounts.
No, yeah, it could be a very big deal. And
So
I'd like to think, I'd like to ask them too about their terminal margins in auto, hardware only without FSD, where they see it going. Because I see it going back to 25%,
yeah,
but I'd like to hear from them
yeah,
on it. Same for energy, and then same for the bot.
yeah. Yeah, again, Elon, of course, has said that 25% on energy. But the question is, would he really, really keep just lowering the price if he was doing so much better on his costs? Would he just keep lowering the price even though he didn't need to? I can
Yeah,
understand where he might want to do that in auto in order to increase the TAM or in order to move the mission forward. But on battery storage, I can't see any benefit, and I can't see any benefit, and I just see a big loss to the shareholders if he doesn't maximize the price of the battery storage units.
I agree.
Okay, all right. Okay, we have two new on the economic side. We had two new reports showing opposite economic trends again today. Job creation slowing, but services businesses increasing sales more than expected in both directions. And that is following a pattern of the past week where we're seeing hiring might be softening, inflation not in check, business better than expected, but GDP numbers being lowered to really slow growth, getting very, very near the 1% line. The bond market seems to think the economy is weak or that inflation is tame. The yields have dropped like a rock the last 3 days, but the stock market seems to think all is well. So meanwhile, the consumers are saying that they're suffering. I mean, suffering, according to the polls. What is your take on the economy right
The
now?
stock market is going off of the most recent earnings and earnings growth, and it was solid. And the stock market didn't want to see yields on the bonds, like on the 10-year go well north of 4.6, 4.7, and it didn't. It's all retreated. So it's in a bit of a Goldilocks phase. The VIX is between, I think, 12 and 14. It could probably go lower. Um, and it's in a bit of a Goldilocks phase. But um, the jobs piece is interesting because there's some reporting out now from Bloomberg and from a few others that says it looks like the Bureau of Labor has overestimated job creation on the order of like by 1 million jobs over the last several months, at least going back into Q3 of last year. And at some report between now and August, they plan on reconciling it. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe they're going to reconcile it, by November 6th.
Yeah.
But at some point they're going to reconcile it soon, and it's gonna, they're going to just peel it off of every month, but it's going to be a big number. And they seem I'll find this article if you can forward it. And and if these numbers are that much lower, like maybe we are, more recessionary, and I think this window for a soft landing really got tight. And the Fed's got to figure out what they're going to do. I mean, Canada cut this morning. We're supposed to hear from Europe and the ECB tomorrow. And there's no expectation that the Fed is cutting next week.
No.
But they've got to figure out what they want to do. They've always said, and Powell has said, is like, I don't want to wait for 2% inflation before I do the first cut. I want to do that beforehand. But to their defense, they've only had really one decent data point which was the last month. And if they can get a couple in a row, and maybe by September we're cutting. But I do think there's still quantitative tightening happening, and we're in a precarious situation. Again, it's the two economies. I think if you're doing very well, I think you're still spending, and you're a bit more insulated from inflation. If you're not doing as well, and so inflation's crushing you, and you've probably blown through a lot of your savings, and you are in trouble. So I think there's two economies to answer your question, and that's, I think, for the next president, they've got to sort through this and figure out, how do we get tax relief to everybody, and how do we kind of untangle what's happening from a Fed perspective? How do we started late, but how do we not get to the point where we're going to start cutting too late. Can we time that a little bit better?
Okay, all right. And so do you think if the unemployment number gets above 4.1, do you think the Fed cuts regardless of inflation?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's two so far. You and Nicholas agree on that one. So I'm keeping track here. So
How about you?
right now, I'm hearing all of these mutterings from purchasing agents, small businesses, et cetera, that their input costs are still going up and that they're still trying to raise prices. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. That worries me more than anything else. You also saw this morning on the jobs number from ADP that the people who were in the same job as last year up 5%. That's way too high for the Fed. For the Fed, they want it to be around 3. So I'm nervous. Well, not nervous. I like recessions. I'm pro recession. You gotta. I had
Get a
a
T-shirt for you with it says on it, pro recession.
recession. Every once in a while, you got to take 2 or 3 quarters, maybe even 4, to clean out the house, and get rid of all the overhangs and all the stuff that's out there that shouldn't be. And then you get 7, 8, 9, 10 years of good news after that. So I'm not worried that they won't cut. What I'm looking at is, what am I looking at? I'm looking at, I think we got a recession. I got a 30% chance still that we got a recession either now or starting third quarter. It may not continue into the fourth quarter because change of government commonly is stimulus. And if you will know on November 3rd, whether that's happened or not, that's plenty of time for businesses to start cranking up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, and remember, I think we have to remember too, we had 2 quarters of negative GDP
Right.
growth in Q2, I think Q3 of 2022.
Yeah.
The media doesn't count that as a recession, but
At least
we had
not
2 quarters of negative GDP growth.
if they had the same 2 quarters of negative GDP growth under Trump, it would have been a recession. Trust me.
Would have been, well, yeah, it would have been, they would have shown bread lines and people in car and rows of cars, which they did during COVID.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, yeah.
All right. Okay, so we have Tesla up today, 23 cents. In the aftermarket, down 12 of those 23. We had all the equities up, Dow up 96, NASDAQ up 330. I don't know why the NASDAQ was up 330. Do you? Oh yeah,
Well,
NVIDIA.
I mean, yeah, NVIDIA pulled the cork off and they're going into a split on Monday. So I think, this could be funds front running it. And again, they have to keep buying this thing, even though the larger it gets,
Yeah.
they have to keep buying it. They have to get to, equal rating. And a lot of people, if you look at a lot of the 13Fs, a lot of people were throwing the towel on this thing in between 8 and 900, said, hey, look, it's run enough.
Yeah.
And here you go. You're looking at it. It's at, 12:37 after hours. So.
Oh, 12:37 after hours. I didn't look at the after. Oh yeah, 12:30, almost 12:38. Passing Apple in as the second largest company in the world right now, and really, really close to Microsoft. It wouldn't take much to get them past Microsoft. Could happen before Friday.
Yeah, Apple's on a bit of Apple's on a bit of a run. So Apple and Nvidia really kind of bolstering things. And then it looks like Bitcoin is also doing pretty well over the last couple of days, over 71,000. So
Yeah,
that's gonna get people out and about for sure.
So bonds down even more in the pre-market. So we're sitting at 4,277. So that's coming down from over 4.5 in a very big hurry. You think it
Yeah,
goes
the big hurry is the problem.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. That's the problem. So do you think it goes more, or do you think there's going to be some people grabbing profits here?
Well, both, but I think it's, we have a CPI data point next week. So
Yes,
I think you're gonna have the market start, gravitating towards that, and there could be some chop into it. And then you're gonna have this 10-for-1 split on Nvidia. It starts trading Monday. You've got the WWC conference, Apple.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, there's a lot of anticipation of announcements coming out of that.
And
So,
Tesla's
you
meeting.
know, and then you've got the Tesla shareholder meeting on Thursday.
Yeah.
That could drive some significant movement.
Do you think
So,
it will be significantly up if the package is voted in favor?
yeah, I mean, even though we know that, you know, there's still legal proceedings, there's still things that have to happen. But if it's kind of overwhelmingly resounding in one direction or another, I think the stock's going to move.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, it's hard to say. Not investment advice.
I think there's so yeah, on that same subject, I think it's obvious that the people that really love tech and that are, probably the typical Tesla uh, bull or Tesla person that would invest in Tesla have obviously, I think, been putting money into NVIDIA. They may not have taken anything out of Tesla. They may have, but they might be using new funds to go into NVIDIA instead of Tesla, which might be keeping us at this kind of flat level, especially with the meeting coming up. Does that fit into any of your thinking?
Well, Goldman says that there's a wall of cash on the sidelines, gigantic, and they think it's going to keep the rally going. You know, is there Nvidia? Yeah, I think a lot of people have de-risked their Tesla position, to be honest with you. Some have sold out completely. Just they think this event could be more, you know, binary than, you know, than not. And so yeah, there's people de-risking their portfolio pretty significantly. So that's why I think with, you know, with good news and a very positive shareholder meeting that, you know, I think it could do well. But if we don't have good news, we don't have a good shareholder meeting, you know,
Yeah.
it's definitely temperamental. But it's really built up a base here, you know, in this 170 area.
Oil is good news. Oil is down significantly, again, coming down rapidly this week. Nobody believes OPEC right now, but it's good for inflation. It takes a couple of months for that to flow through. But I don't see anything in anything that I'm reading that would suggest that this will bounce back up again unless OPEC does something really big, like additional cuts or something like that. Any thoughts
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
hearing?
same. No,
Okay.
same.
Natural gas is not really, I went back and looked at, the overall, like, years and years of natural gas, and it's around the higher area right now. It's not crazy. But again, natural gas is a big influence on the overall economy, but it's going the other way. It's been going up for a week or so, because apparently there's just natural gas guys can turn that spigot off so easy. So the producers are not
Yeah.
producing because they were oversupplied. You hear anything else on that one that would influence it one way or the other?
No, no, I've heard similar things.
Okay. All right. Silver up, copper up. Um, copper is, the canary in the coal mine, although right now maybe it's a kind of a different thing because of the huge build out in electrical that we're going to need in the country over the next 10 years. Is copper giving us a signal, or do you think that signal now is too muddied by the electrical needs?
No, I think commodities are giving you a signal, and you know, I think there's signals in the job market. I think you got a declining GDP. I think the commodities are telling you something. So again, we've got to be careful here, and figure out, you know, because you've had this tightening for so long, it's going to take a long time for the loosening to work its way through the economy. So I think commodities are flashing you a little bit of a danger signal. I think over the last month or two, that soft landing window has really tightened up.
Finally, on equities, we've got the Dow. Well, you could basically just say that the equities are close to unchanged. Dow up 7, S&P up 3, and the NASDAQ up 18. That would be 0.02%, 0.06%, and 0.10% respectively. So after a fairly active day today, and as you point out, the VIX has been falling. Do we have is tomorrow a sideways day while we wait to see what happens with jobs on Friday?
Man, it's hard to really predict the day-to-day movements of the market, but usually when you have a big run like this,
Yeah.
usually it could chop a bit. Yeah, jobs is a big data point, and then CPI the following week. But I tell you, if any of that news is encouraging, specifically on CPI, if we get a really cool CPI print, I think the markets will respond well.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I think we've covered it. Unless you've got 1 minute in case you're passionate about something that I didn't cover.
Well, I mean, I think the only thing is we're in the final days of the shareholder vote. So if you haven't found a way to vote, it's pinned on a number of accounts. Alexandra Sawyer's accounts. So look there. Make sure you're voting. Make sure you're voting all of your accounts, and make sure if you've got a brother, a sister, an elderly family member that may not be they're not watching Randy and I, and they're not attached to YouTube all the time. They don't see this. Make sure you make them aware of it and maybe help them walk them through the voting process and just get it done. So I think we need to make our voice heard as a shareholder community and make sure all the votes are counted in the best we can.
All right, Jeff, as always, I appreciate you coming on Wednesdays. And I think we covered, I think it was a big news day, and I hope that we've covered it. Let us know in the comments below. Did we miss anything that we should have talked about with regard to these three pretty serious news issues today? All right, Jeff, thanks again. And
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, everyone.
for all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.